Built by KGCI, Real Estate On Air, powered by the Mindset and Motivation Monday. Here's your morning primer.
Today, we're super excited to welcome Taliya Bashani, a real estate attorney and negotiation expert who represents buyers, sellers, and developers both in Florida and New York. Taliya started Tab Law Firm 15 years ago and has closed over 10,000 properties and has over $500 million in property value. She also has a coaching and training program where she teaches realtors the legal edge and the various tools needed to win more exclusive listings, close more deals, and make more money. And who wouldn't like that? Taliya has worked with some of the top real estate agents, including agents from Million Dollar Listing New York, as well as our very own Mr. Shane Carvalho. And Shane, I'll let you kind of finish the intro and maybe share a little bit about how you met Taliya.
Yeah, actually, Taliya stood out from day one. We actually met in Swap the Biz, which is a networking group in New York, New Jersey, and and you've met the leader of that group, Michael. I think you were on once, but anyway, that's where her and I met. We hit it off, and then we had a common tie with real estate and EXP, and and then our personalities. It's so basically I got invited out to come, get to know their group in Florida a couple months back. And we connected. And then, I don't know, we're so busy. We need to stay more in touch and do more. So we're working on some stuff. Hopefully we'll be able to do more business in the future, trying to connect her and some of the key people in her group to West Coast. It'd be great to do something on the West Coast as to what they're doing on the East Coast. I mean, they're killing it over there. So, not only that, Taliya is also just, like you and I, loves the good food and, and of course, loving the Florida climate and weather and, non-summer weather. We just have a lot in common. And so she's been a great person to get to know. We're still getting to know each other. Hopefully we'll be able to do more business together in the future.
Well, and with that, so Taliya, welcome to the show. As soon as I heard foodie, I was like, we're going to get along very well.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. It's so wonderful to be a part of, your team, your network, and your program. So I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, and Taliya, we want to, our show is primarily focused on, helping agents who are currently in production grow and take their business to that next level. And certainly you are all about that and you help agents do the same thing. But also, what we all want to get into with this show is not only that, but also, you've built up this tremendously successful business for yourself in practice. Shane has told me a lot about you in terms of just your passion and drive. So, I kind of want to maybe start by digging in a little bit into that aspect of your business, and maybe share a little bit about, how you started down this path. Because I'm assuming, you obviously weren't like an overnight success. You built this up over 15 years. How did you get started?
Yeah, sure. So, my career history really started back in New York City. After undergrad, I wanted to make it on my own. I wanted to go into entertainment, TV, music, film, whatever it is. I got started actually in the television industry. I was working for Discovery Channel, and I was in their ad sales department, because I wanted to be where the action was and where the fun was. However, I was getting paid very little. It was about $25,000 a year at the time for a new, college graduate. And I really didn't think that, this career was going to work out for me in the long run because of the money. Right. So I decided to go to law school. That was after about a year and a half of trying to make it on my own. Went to law school. During the same time, my dad was in the mortgage business. So he had a mortgage company. It was a really hot, busy time. It was between 2005 and 2008 before the market crashed. And so I was in law school while he was doing mortgages, and I was working at his office on the side. So okay. I got the ins and outs of the real estate industry and the mortgage business, and really kind of learned the ropes working for him part-time. So after I graduated from law school, I moved back to New York. I started working for a midtown real estate law firm that did all residential real estate closings in New York. So working for the partner at the time, I was doing probably up to 50 or 60 closings a month managing these files.
Wow.
As a first year associate. So it was like sink or swim, and I really got a lot of hands-on experience during that time. Then after about a year and a half working for that firm, I prepared a new development offering plan. So in New York, in order to build a new project or develop a new condo, the sponsor or developer has to file this, it's about a 300-page book with the Attorney General's office.
Okay.
And it's like soup to nuts, everything that goes into the new development before he can start accepting, offers and collecting deposits. So long story short, I did about 2 offering plans, and then the partner asked me to do a personal offering plan for him and his colleagues. So I did it from scratch. He promised me a $5,000 bonus. I finally got it accepted by the Attorney General's office. And then in '08, when the market crashed, he decided not to proceed with the project and abandoned the plan.
Oh, goodness.
Well, also, he stiffed me on my bonus. So I was mortified, because I basically was really counting on that money as a 28-year-old. And I essentially told him, look, I did the work, I'm still entitled to the money, to the bonus. And he was like, nope, sorry, we're not going to pay you because we're not moving forward. So with that, I put in my 2-week notice, and I was like, I'm not going to stay at a place that doesn't value, my time and my effort, or me as a person, really. So it was about principle at that point. And so I left, and I had one other offer on the table from another firm, but I also had an opportunity from a friend of mine who was working at JP Morgan Chase at the time, and they were looking to build their bank attorney list with minority and women attorneys.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, wow, this would be a great account. Can I take it to the new firm that I'm going to? She's like, no, you'd have to be solo. And I was thinking about it, and I'm like, okay, I'm a year and a half in. This could be a great starting point for me. And after speaking, with my family and just kind of like doing some soul searching, I was like, okay, let me take a stab at it. I'm going to start my own practice. I'm going to give it a shot. If I fail after a year, I'll go back to working for a firm somewhere, the firm life. And if not, then, I'll just, continue growing my practice.
Yeah.
So with that, I was working out of my studio apartment on Wall Street at the time. So I had a 63 Wall Street address, which kind of like dubbed as an office address because nobody knew. And every time I had a client come in for a contract signing or closing, I would have the doorman call me, and then we had like a business center on the 5th floor. And then I would go greet the client. I'd take them to the 5th floor business center. And then I really kind of grew from there before I got office space and hired staff and things like that. So I really worked myself up from the ground up. And it was great. And that was 15 years ago. So
that's really incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to dig in on one thing that you said, and you said you left your original position out of principle. And it seems like that's something that's really big for you when it sounds like that's something that's very big for you when it drives your decision making. Like, what else would you say, like on a daily basis, drives you today in terms of continuing your growth and your business?
Sure. So, for me, a lot of it is, I just want to live my life and grow my business on the basis of integrity, right? So I'm not about cutting corners or shafting people or disrespecting people along the way. There's some people that'll just step on people's heads to get to the top. Right. I do it with grace and I do it with respect. Even though I'm very driven, I'm very determined, I'm still going to carry myself in a certain way where I respect those who I work with and I expect the same in return. So if I ever have like a hot-headed attorney on another side of the deal that is like yelling and screaming and, over the smallest thing, right? And again, this is a real estate transaction. This is not litigation. We're not in a lawsuit, and we're just trying to get the deal to the closing table. Don't start arguing with me about, whatever it is. So whenever that comes about, I'm a very diplomatic person but I cut them off right there and then. And I'll be like, okay, maybe this is not a good time to discuss this. I'll get back to you. And I hang up the phone because I'm not going to engage in that type of, that just negative manner, because I choose to surround myself with positivity.
I love that. I can relate. You and I have a lot in common. I think that's why we like to connect. But I was gonna just say, along those lines, have you encountered at times too, like, because you stay calm and level, right?
Yeah.
Don't you see how they get even more angry?
Yes.
I'm so, and it's interesting because it took my coach in my mid 20s. It took my coach to teach me how to separate the emotion,
Right.
and that's what helps you have a lot of success too in your negotiation, because you keep a clear mind.
Yeah.
But you haven't
It's,
always been like that. I feel like you can get pretty fired up.
oh yeah. No, I definitely, no, this has been like, these are like growing pains, and you also have to build tough skin. I used to cry, when in the beginning of my career, if attorney would call and yell at me or whatever, I'd break down and I would cry when I got off the phone. Like I was like a deer in the headlights. But you really have to, in this industry, especially with as many people as you come across, you have to build that tough skin, And so over the years, I've built that. I was definitely not bulletproof. I'm still not bulletproof, but I know how to diffuse a situation, and I'm about killing them with kindness, because you're right, Shane, they elevate their temper, and I just, I stay calm, and I stay at just like a neutral position.
That's
And I'm
also
like,
in New
you're not going
York.
to get a rise out of me,
Well, you're also in New York, because
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, yeah. I mean, if you can do it there, you know. You do. But no, I love the other thing too about principle. But well, I didn't really get a chance to interject, but like along with, we were talking about principle, but your journey of resilience. Like, one door wasn't opening or something wasn't working, and you just kept finding your way. And I mean, since I've met you, I still like, you're so driven. You're always going. Like, have you ever slowed down? Like, because I feel like you still have that same drive that you had then, and that was a few years ago, right?
Yeah, a few years ago. Yeah. The way that I look at life and just my journey in general is I refuse to get complacent. I feel like life is all about opportunity, and we're here to make it happen. So, however you want to write your story, it's up to you to write the story. Nobody else is going to do it for you. And if you just sit back and you kick up your feet and you eat bonbons all day, you're not going to get very far in life. So for me, it's every day is an opportunity of personal growth. Yeah, I have my, times where I check out, and I take a mini vacay or whatever it is, but I literally get fueled by, just increasing productivity and increasing, I'm a high energy person and I'm an extrovert. So I feed off of other people's energies. I can't be sitting in my house by myself, not talking to anybody, because then I just kind of waste away. So I need that. It's what drives me.
I was just talking, and I think I was talking to Michael about that yesterday. Being an extrovert, being fed. Was
Yeah.
that us that were talking about that, Michael, yesterday? Because that's such a
Probably,
big
yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, you talk to me a lot. Yeah, no, I do talk a lot. But no, that's awesome. I feel that. But yeah, no, and that's one thing I was telling Michael. We were talking about, our episode today, was that's one thing that, like, I really connect with you on, is that we have that, in common, just that drive.
Yeah.
And I love that about, people, because, something we were discussing this morning is there is a lot of complacency. And now in the social media era, and people, whether it's real or not, showing their successes or what they're doing, people don't realize the level of work, commitment, and drive it takes to be successful anymore. I feel like that has changed tremendously from what it was like back in the day. Now I know I'm sounding like I'm old, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's such a different, it's just so different now. And so, like, people like yourself really stand out. And that's one of the qualities I admire about you, and what I'm sure is driving your success.
Thank you. Yeah, in today's day, it's about earning the success. There are no handouts. I think the, younger generations, unfortunately, just have this sense of entitlement, and they don't have the hard, work and that ethic that we kind of grew up with as 80s babies. And so
Right.
it's a little bit different of a grind, and you have to make it for yourself. I'm not going to ride on anybody's back.
Yeah, no, and I love that.
No, something like that is super important because, like, Shane, to your point, like, people these days, they go on social media, they see that, and they think, oh, I can put in a little bit of time and effort, I can get there too. Or, they start something but they never finish it, because then they start realizing how difficult it is. So Talia, I mean, you've probably faced a lot of challenges in kind of your journey up to this point. What would you say have been some of the hardest ones that you faced, and how did you overcome those?
Sure. So a lot of, for me, especially being a woman in the real estate industry and being a female attorney in a very male dominated industry, I have to work a little bit harder to make a name for myself. Right. So, when it comes to getting selected by clients, as an attorney, and if they, call a male attorney versus calling me or whatever, they might just feel that they're going to get, more protection or more, assertiveness with a man than a female. So my biggest challenge is really the gender roles, in the real estate industry, and proving myself even more, to let clients know, look, I'm going to do just as good of a job, and if not better, just give me a shot, because people always have preconceived notions. People already have, their idea of what's going to make an effective lawyer, and I want a man, so that's probably one of my biggest challenges. But how I've overcome that is really just building my reputation and proving myself, with, real estate agents, with clients, getting testimonials. I'm like, you don't have to hear it from me, hear it from them, hear it from the clients that I've worked with, the agents that I've worked with, and let them tell you, because that's really, what's going to speak volumes more than myself. And then I just say, look, give me a shot. A lot of realtors, again, New York is an attorney state. So here it's required by law that you retain a lawyer before you even can sign a contract. So before you buy or sell, you have to retain counsel. So I always tell agents here, I say, look, I understand you have relationships with other attorneys. I just want to be one of the three that you recommend. And more often than not, they're like, I really appreciate that. I don't even have any female attorneys on my list. I would love to add you to my list and, have a chance to work with you. So at least, I'm getting my foot in the door that way.
And oftentimes I imagine that's really all you need, right? Is you get your foot in the door, and your book of work kind of speaks for itself, and how you carry yourself and how you interact with people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what it takes. Mm-hmm.
So what's your favorite part? I mean, because obviously you do business in Florida is different than New York.
Yeah.
But like what is your favorite part? Because I mean, obviously you're multifaceted and you're talented in different things. Like what's your favorite part of your practice, or what you do on a daily basis?
For me, my favorite part is really the education. So it's twofold for me. On one hand, I love, working with first-time home buyers and making their dream come true, because there's some, people that just never imagined, being able to own property. So it's like this, I have, a hand in like being a dream maker, so that part I love, because it gives me that, instant reward, within 60 days, because I see how happy my clients are. And then the other part of my practice is really education. I've been teaching CRE classes for the last 10 years, to realtors. I do about, a monthly webinar. I have about 15 different topics. So I really love teaching agents how to grow their business, increase negotiation tactics, save deals from falling through, giving them the tips and the tricks and the strategies to make deals happen, to close the gap. So that's really where my passion lies, because look, I can do closings all day long. It's great. It's my bread and butter. But at the end of the day, you have to, what's going to fulfill your soul? What's really going to give you that, return on your investment, if you will. And yeah, the money is great, but it's seeing other people succeed. It's seeing people, being like, oh, I utilized, that tip about negotiating personal property, or, the close and lease back period. That really helped. That's what got the deal done. I love hearing those stories because I just helped somebody, get a deal done and, collect their commission. So that's really what I enjoy the most.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode. Now, if you're watching on YouTube or streaming this on your podcast platform, if you could do us a favor, leave a comment down below and let us know where you're listening or watching the show from today. It greatly helps with the algorithm and helps us get reach out to more people who need or want to hear what we have to say. We greatly appreciate it. And now back to the show. I personally really love the fact that like you love helping first-time home buyers, because I can totally relate to that too. I'm relatively newer in real estate compared to Shane. I'm only like 6.5 years in, but I focus a lot on like new construction, first-time home buyers. And part of the reason I love doing that is I had a bad experience my first time out. Like before I got my license, my first property, had an agent that just didn't really explain a lot of things, didn't guide me through it. And a lot of times with first-time home buyers, it's like the deer in the headlights, and they don't know what they don't know. They don't know what kind of questions to ask. And like to be able to walk and guide them through that process and then see how happy they are at the end of the day when you give them your keys. It's just, is like the best feeling in the world.
It really is.
Well, and their appreciation, because they haven't done it before, it's such a big thing. Like their appreciation for you can be, not to discount like what my great repeat investment, whatever clients feel or appreciate, but just that first time, like I just closed one last week, and it's like on another level, the excitement and the gratitude and the appreciation.
Yeah.
So yeah, totally can relate to that. That's interesting that you chose education, because like, it has a lot to do with your personality, right? We're extroverts, and then we love helping people. I'm a big fan of helping people, and I find myself now as well really taking a lot of direction towards mentorship and coaching and guiding as well. I love that.
Yeah.
And if you ask me the same question, I would still juggle a little bit, because there's a lot of things I love about what I do, but I could totally relate to that, to both you and Michael loving that. But
well, Talia, I want to dig in a little bit now kind of on your coaching side. And as you're kind of helping realtors, you had mentioned you kind of help them, especially with a lot of negotiation tactics. So what are some of the things that you find, what are some of the gaps or some of the challenges that most agents face when it comes to kind of, being able to close more deals, being able to find more listings, or being able to close negotiations? Like what are some of the biggest challenges that you find them facing?
I think it really comes down to not knowing how to navigate the deal properly, and, not being able to work proactively and getting stuck working reactively. Meaning when an issue arises, there's a great way to avoid that issue and common pitfalls by getting ahead of the ball before, the shit hits the fan, excuse my language, as opposed to, the ball drops and now you're trying to, pick up the pieces and save the deal. So the strategies and the tools that I teach really help agents be aware and foresee issues before they exist, so their deal doesn't die, halfway through. So, for an example, I think it's always great to negotiate inspection contingency thresholds, okay? Because what you don't want to happen is, all right, you have an accepted offer. Great. Yeah. The parties come to a meeting of the minds. Wonderful. The contract signed. Now you have an inspection contingency, and the parties are going to be nickeling and diming over the smallest things. So you prepare expectations in advance and you negotiate a threshold with your buyer. Okay. Because let's say it was a tough negotiation between offer and acceptance. The seller wants the certainty and the confidence that if he's going to accept your price, that you're going to move forward with that price, not that you're going to come back and ask for 50K off, So what I always recommend to them, I say, hey, why don't you go in negotiating an inspection contingency threshold, which means so long as the repair costs don't exceed, 10% or 10 grand rather, or it could be a percentage, 5% of the purchase price, whatever it may be, then the buyer agrees to proceed at the full purchase price. But if it exceeds 20K or whatever that threshold is, then the parties have a right to renegotiate, or either party can cancel, or, the buyer will assume the first 20K and then the seller will cover, anything above that, whatever it may be. But that type of strategy really helps keep the deal together so it doesn't fall apart in the beginning. And same thing with appraisal contingency thresholds. Same thing. If you're going to come in above ask as a buyer, then the agent needs to, advise the client, hey, look, we can't negotiate an appraisal contingency when you're coming in above ask because the seller's picking your offer over all the other ones because you're in at 25K above ask or whatever it is. You have to assume that overage, because you're coming in over ask. So it's things like that some agents may not know to kind of discuss or inform their client. And I just feel like the more transparency there is and the more agents can manage expectations of their clients, the smoother the deal is going to go. So things like that are the different, tactics that I try and teach. And then obviously my course, which is Win the Listing, really helps, agents not just focus on buyers, where they're, spinning their wheels and spending all this time with the buyer, pulling listings and doing showings only for the buyer to jump ship or not be loyal or not ready to pull the trigger. And now all of that time and energy is wasted. If they shift their focus towards sellers and winning more listings, whether it's cold callings or mailers or sharing success stories and saying, hey, I just closed, XYZ Main Street down the block from you, I can do a great job at selling your property, they have a greater potential to close on that deal within 3 to 6 months, and most likely every seller is going to turn into a buyer and they're going to buy, or relocate or upsize or downsize or whatever the circumstances are. So now that agent can double their commission just by virtue of having an exclusive listing.
I love that. I could relate to some of the things you're talking about because obviously I, coach agents as well. Like we were talking about the appraisal and the whole being over. I got some creative strategies for that. And I think along the lines too, because you are an attorney, I'm sure that you can help them also write like really clean offers, because you're dealing with these contracts every day.
Right.
And that's something where, setting expectations, but also delivering something really clean and concise and thoroughly filled out. Mm-hmm. That's been a real strength for me because I'm good at winning offers on multiple offers from the buyer side. And, I'm more of a listing agent, but I'm, what I do help my sellers buy and everything else. Yeah. You always want to win the battle. So no, I love that. I love that. Love the strategies. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course.
Yeah, I have to say, like, I appreciate the fact that your advice about kind of focusing on the listings and the sellers. Like, I feel like it's great advice because I have talked to a lot of agents, especially here in the Bay Area. I recently spoke to an agent like even last week, and she was just sharing with me like how tiring it is to be on the buying side sometimes. Because she even has like she's had clients that are repeat clients, and because they want a better commission split or something else, they're going to go find, there's no loyalty, and they're going to go find another buyer's agent who's willing to give them like half of their commission.
Right.
Yeah. And I think you and I have talked about this a lot. Like when you're on the selling side, there's more guarantees. You have a lot more control over the process.
Yeah.
There's a lot of power.
You got to establish your value though. Yeah. We could have a whole nother session on that. That's the problem is you have to establish your value as an agent or as an attorney or closing attorney, like whatever it is that you're doing, you have to establish your value with a client and you got to own it. I'm disgusted by this.
I tell agents all the time, do not accept less than 6%. Unless you're in a luxury listing and it's like 20 million and up, and you want to take a little bit less, fine. But otherwise don't sell. If it's under $1 million or 2 million, don't sell yourself short. You deserve, that full 6%. And a lot of arguments, come up from sellers like, well, I can just sell this property on myself. What do I need an agent for? I can do for sale by owner. But actually, statistics show that sellers that sell on their own make 30% less in their sales price than if they were to use an agent. And an agent's commission is only 6%. So it's like you're heeing and hawing over, I don't want to pay 6%. Why do I need an agent? I'll just put it on Zillow. But meanwhile, you don't know the first thing about negotiating a real estate deal. And you don't know anything about comps, values, contingencies, disclosures, any of that. And it's like, it's, a penny wise, a pound foolish. So what are you really saving at the end of the day? You're losing.
Well, you got to break it down what 1% is, because I'm a 6% guy up to 5 million. I mean, the way I break it down, it's 6% to 5 million, 5% from 5 to 10 million, and I negotiate above 10 million. And like the most expensive listing I've ever had was 16 million. Nice. And I went 4.5 on that, which, that just seemed reasonable, but yeah, but when you break it down as what 1% is and how valuable that is to us, when they're trying to be at 5 or 6 or whatever,
right?
It's like, I know I can make you more than that, 10,000, 20,000 you want to save. And I love that, bringing up the statistics about, because the other thing is we stage all our homes, that's another thing where, staging statistically, right? So but then that's why you need to be a professional, have your value.
Right.
And I love that you and I are trying to coach people up to be better about that.
Yeah. And also to lead with confidence and enthusiasm, because as soon as your seller, your client, sees a break, or a crack, I should say, or of insecurity, or thinking twice, no, you stay firm, you stand your ground, you lead with that confidence, and you're like, I'm worth it, and I'm going to prove it to you, and I'm here to get you the best, dollar for your property. Plus, you're fronting all of your time, expenses, and resources, even turning the property around to go live on the market. So that's your hustle, that's your investment, And I really stress the one-stop shop. I think it's really important for agents when they're pitching sellers on exclusives to say, look, I'm a one-stop shop. I have everything in my team. I have the contractors, the videographers, the photographers, the stagers, the attorneys, whatever you need. You don't have to deal with multiple different people. And if there's like any eyesores in the property, like water stains or any type of cosmetic damage, things like that, hey, I'll bring my contractor in. He'll plaster this up. We'll make it, good. I'll bring my stager in, because we all know the perception of value is key. That's really what's going to sell the most. And a lot of buyers need that, that vision. And it's not just about numbers, but it's also about the emotional attachment. Can I see myself living in this house? When I walk in, is it bright and sunny and airy? Are the, curtains drawn? Is everything look, beautiful? Because they need to picture themselves. It's an emotional connection. It's not just, let's just look at the price,
Yeah. I always talk about people falling in love with our listings. So you're speaking my language. I've had people literally fall in love with.
Really? Yeah.
Oh yeah. I had one house that sticks out in my mind in the Bay Area that the buyers were so in love. They made an over list price offer on the Saturday, the first open house Saturday. And then we had one more open house on Sunday. We had an offer deadline for Tuesday.
Okay.
But they wanted to make a preemptive offer. They sat in my open house, the whole open house on Sunday.
Oh my gosh.
They sat
to scare away other buyers.
Pretty much.
They're like, this is our property. Nope. We've already got it.
You know what? Just fun fact. They called me 3 years later to list their home instead of their own agent because they were so impressed with my presentation of the property.
Wow.
That was flattering. I didn't expect that call. And they were not nice. They were difficult people.
Really?
So when they called me, I was like, they want us? I mean, is money that valuable to them? Because they were not nice buyers.
It's a testament to who you are then. I mean, they were impressed, clearly.
Yeah. So, but it goes back to what you're saying, that if you really work at a high level, you don't have to go steal anybody's clients. But if you shine, you're going to get
you, and you're going to be memorable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a certain amount of, if you're professional, if you're organized, your value will shine. I think back to one of my first clients. It was actually a buyer that I met doing an open house for Shane. and this is, I'm not an extrovert like either of you. I'm always like down the middle between introvert and extrovert. But I mean, what I do have going like is my engineering background. And I remember for this one client, and especially with a lot of clients in the Bay Area, like they come from these tech companies. And one of the first things I did was I was doing comps, but I did comps in my own Excel spreadsheet. And then I showed him exactly kind of how I broke everything down little by little to kind of get to the range that we were going to put an offer in. And this guy was so impressed. I was like, at this point, by just based on his reaction, I was like, okay, no, like he's not going to go for anybody else. But so sometimes it goes back to, again, the quality of the work, the product that you put out, how you treat people. And then going back to earlier about, not lowering your commission. Like I came up through the corporate world. I did a lot of corporate pricing, and there's something to be said about, there's a few ways to do pricing. One is you could do it from a cost-based perspective and just make sure you make a little bit above what your costs are. The other way is value. And I think it's the same thing in real estate. It's like you stick with the value that you know that you can provide, and you stick to your guns, you stick to your principles. And sometimes even subconsciously, if you, to your point, Talia, if you show a little bit of a crack, you say, hey, I'll lower it by 1%. That just opens the floodgates for them to say, okay, this person actually doesn't believe in their own value, and I can get more.
And I can get more. Right. And they're going to continue digging, And at the end of the day, I say you get what you pay for. If you want to work with a discount broker, that's charging whatever, 3% or whatever it is, that's what you're going to get. That's the service you're going to get.
Yep.
They're going to put it on MLS. They're going to put it online. They're not going to, spend half the amount of time and effort to really, get your property out there, to market it properly, to stage it properly. And your property is going to sit on the market, and it's going to go stale, and you're not going to get any offers.
Yeah, exactly.
So
yeah, that just makes me smile. I just I laugh.
Shane's like, I live this every day. This is like
those are not my people. I have found my people. Those are not my people.
Yeah.
And our clients come back, which is a testament, right? Like right now, 6 of my listings right now are clients who I sold the home to. Get this, anywhere from 2 to 9 years ago.
Wow.
The last 6 that I just got in the last
couple. And they
of
keep coming back to you. That's amazing.
They
That's
do.
fun.
And shame on me for not always being the best about my prospecting follow-up. Mm-hmm. I do have some things in place. I'm a big nurturer, okay. But I actually become friends and really love a lot of these clients, and we do show them love, but I don't, just with what I've been through in my own life the last couple of years with health and such, I just haven't quite been able to do the kind of outreach I like to do. Yeah. The fact that they come back regardless and dodge so many social media ads and Zillow people and everything else, it's incredible what they have to go through. It's like a salmon swimming upstream to spawn.
Yeah.
It's amazing what they get through to get there. Right. And so when they get back to me, I'm flattered by that, but at the same time, I'm also makes me nervous because it's like, oh my gosh, it's like they could have been picked up by someone who is out there getting in front of them,
Well, that just means you're memorable, because if you're not even doing follow-ups and newsletters or whatever it is, then that just means that you really kind of made an impression on them and they want to work with you again. So they come back to you.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, like I said, I do a fair amount of nurturing and reach out, but not to the level that I'd like to.
Okay.
And so, but it still is, that's what I'm saying. But I still feel like there's a lot of obstacles out there because there's not a lot of inventory, and agents are just finding every which way to go chase down any listing to get their hands on. So,
oh yeah, exactly.
They're just valuable commodity right now, listings.
Well, and the other thing is, the lower the commission, the less likely you're going to have a buyer's agent bring their client through. So that's another argument that I always make, to sellers and agents when they're trying to
me too. It's got to be at least 2.5.
It's got to be, because you're missing a whole boatload of potential buyers because their agents aren't going to waste time on it. Right. Yep. Regardless of how perfect the property and the price might be, the agents aren't even going to show it.
You know what's interesting for me? Because obviously I work more on the listing side, but on the buy side, I never pay attention to that number, but it's weird how my eye will catch that. Oh. If it's not at least 2.5%, my eye will catch that when I'm going through listings, because I honestly don't look at that because I'm always looking out for my client's best interest. Yeah. My client wants to see a certain house, or there's certain houses in the neighborhood they want to be in. I always focus on what's best for my client. I don't really look at but when I see that, what I do, because I am not an agent that looks out for my own money, I look out for taking care of my client. What I do is I send a commission demand or a commission agreement with my offer for the additional commission.
Oh, good point.
Yeah, because that's just ridiculous. I'm like, I want my client to get what they want,
Yeah.
but instead of being, some agents are shady, they'll avoid those listings. I will basically say, you know what? We'll do a good job. We'll get this done. You want us on the other end? This is what it costs.
Right.
And I don't care how they slice it on their side, but that's what it is. And I haven't had pushback on that.
Oh, good. Okay.
And if they push back, then
then you're
move
pushing
on.
back.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, negotiation. Yeah, don't even get me going on negotiation. I mean, I'm a savage, which I know you are, Talia. So I won't even. I'm just a savage with negotiation. Don't get me started.
Yeah. It's that poker face. It's all about the poker face.
It is. Talia, I think we'll kind of wrap up this episode with a couple of questions for you. One is, give us 3 words that you live by.
3 words that I live by. Okay, I love that. So positivity, passion, and integrity.
I love it.
I mean, that sums up who I am. You know?
That's and it all aligns with our the character. I love it.
It does.
Yeah.
It doesn't even surprise me.
And the very last question we always like to end with all our guests is, if you were starting a real estate production business today, knowing everything that you know through all your years of experience, what would you do differently? How would you go about building up your business today?
Okay, great question. For me, it would probably be, I'm not here to reinvent the wheel. I want to copy the wheel. So I would model my business after those people that have already made it and are successful in their business, and whatever they did, I would copy what they did because I know it works.
Yep.
I don't need to be a scientist. I don't need to try out a bunch of different things. If I know that there is a, sure model that has been successful for somebody that I admire or want to be like, then I'm going to replicate that same business model instead of experimenting.
Replicate. I like that better. We usually call it R&D, and it stands for rip off and duplicate, but replicate and duplicate might actually be a much nicer term.
Just a little bit more,
Yeah, just a little bit better.
Although, remember, she's in New York, Michael. We always like to, hammer New York.
It's
you guys rip things off.
What'd you say?
You guys rip things off over there.
Oh, we rip things off. Yeah, a lot of definitely a lot of bootlegging going on here.
I'm just kidding. No, I appreciate that. No, and I appreciate you coming on and actually, spending some time having this conversation with us.
Well, thank you guys.
Yeah, and just you actually gave me some thoughts for maybe some, future topics that we could tackle even on other platforms that I think we can go deep on. Like we were talking, yesterday about some of the education and stuff and being involved in maybe presenting and stuff. I think that there's a lot of really cool topics that came out of this, Talia, that we could actually even make content on, you know what I mean? Even if it's not education, probably make some content with.
Super. I'm super excited. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. I'm so grateful and appreciative